So, once again, the most polarizing topic on the iRacing platform, at least it has been for the last year, dirt, and more specifically, the winged sprint cars. And we're at it again as we had another update to the cars and the tracks, which is causing a lot of, I guess, talk would be the best way to put it in the forum. So, what does it all mean? Are the cars good? Are they bad? What about the tracks? We're going to take a look at all of that coming up next. What's up, everybody? Thomas Brennan here. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. And like I said, we are going to be taking a look at the winged sprint cars, specifically with the dirt. Now, keep in mind, we had a dirt update to the tracks, okay? That was with both the tacky and the slick. I'm going to talk about that in a separate video in regards to the other cars, okay? The late models, the midget, UMP, big block, that type of stuff. Because the winged sprint cars also had an aero adjustment in this build. And when it comes to the aero adjustment, along with the dirt, I think there's a lot of good stuff that's happened with this build. I do. Now, before we continue, I want to make this abundantly clear, even though I always make this clear whenever I do videos like this, review videos like this, because last time, I think during the dirt refresh, my video got used as evidence as to why the dirt build could be good, and then it was also used as evidence as to, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I have always stated the exact same facts. I have never raced a sprint car before. Never raced them. I set them up for years, been around them a very long time, but I do personally know, and talk to almost on a daily basis people that have raced sprint cars, that do race sprint cars, and are around them all the time, and they are very serious iRacers, okay? So all the information I'm going to talk about today, and along with my thoughts and my feelings, understand I've talked to real world people and gotten their opinions on this as well. This is not just me saying, hey, it's great, and then that's it. All right. So understand the things that I'm talking about. I've talked to real life drivers about this. Okay. So I want that to be known, because when we get these builds, what typically happens, at least from what I can see, is people go out, they try it, and most of the time they don't like it. This is pretty common with anything. I'm like this too with a lot of stuff. I don't really like change in most aspects of my life. On the sim, I do like it. Even when things aren't great and it goes the wrong way, like when we had the wonky setup and all that crap like that, that sucked. I hated it. But I did like the fact that they were at least trying to make things better. We were never going to have a one-to-one sim, you guys, especially on dirt. It's just too hard to replicate. It just is. iRacing, on the asphalt side, iRacing works with NASCAR. They get NASCAR data. NASCAR drivers are on the sim consistently. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is one of the biggest iRacers in the world, and he's probably the most known figure in NASCAR. He doesn't even race anymore, right? So they're going to make sure that that stuff is as close as they could possibly get it. We don't really have that on the dirt side. David Gravel's not working with iRacing on a daily basis, right, or weekly basis to try to help improve this stuff. We don't have cars in the World of Outlaws with telemetry gathering data that they're running and then sending it to iRacing. We don't have that. First of all, it's illegal. They can't even do it. And second of all, if they can do it and they can figure something, they're not going to share that, right? I mean, they're just not. It's not the same type of thing. So we're never going to have that one-to-one comparison. But in my opinion, I think what we have right now is definitely a step in the right direction. I'm going to explain to you guys why I think that, what's been changed, and how it can affect what you've got, okay? So let's head over to the sim. We'll walk through a couple of things in the garage. We'll actually look at the notes so I can quote it exactly correct. And then I'll cover the stuff, because I've got some notes. I'll cover the stuff that I've talked to with my friends who are, sprint car guys, and we'll cover what they say, what they think, and, my thoughts with it. So let's head over and take a look at that. Okay, so iRacing's update to the sprint cars, you can see here, was the aerodynamic model has been improved with additional research data. We don't know what the data is. We don't know what the research was or anything like that, but it has been improved based on the build notes. One of the things that I talked to my buddy Kyle about recently, and I've mentioned Kyle before, race sprint cars, both winged and non-winged. He's raced micros. He owns sprint cars to this day, races them pretty much, 40 weekends of the year. One of the things that we talked about was the Aero on the wings. So when I was setting up sprint cars a very long time ago, Aero was not talked about like it is today. So we didn't understand the concept of dirty air. That was not even something that we thought about, 20 years ago. You didn't even think about dirty air. Okay. It just wasn't even a thought. All right. That being said, we would have never, and I cannot repeat this enough, never put our top wing at 30 degrees. Now, just because we wouldn't have done it back then doesn't mean you wouldn't do that now. But, and this is a big but, there was times last season, season before, where you would run a 30 top wing with a 410 sprint at a track like Eldora, and it would be faster than running 24 top wing. And it's because the car would be gripped up more. You're not getting wheel spin. That should not be the case. So with the wing, the top wing, there should be a law of diminishing returns in terms of the angle. Once you get past about 27 degrees, the amount of downforce that you are gaining based on that angle is probably not going to outweigh the drag that you're creating. So more or less, you're really just slowing the car down. Yes, you are getting more downforce, but you're slowing the car down more than the downforce you're generating based on the theory that people have with them in real life. Like I said, there could be certain situations where you would do that, but just for places that people that I know where they run out here on the West Coast and stuff like that, they're like, no, we wouldn't do that. Now, with the Aero and all the testing that I've done, that seems to kind of fall in line with what I'm starting to see. And both lap times, the feel of the car, and in the data that I'm seeing. I'm noticing that when you really put a ton of angle in it, you're just kind of slowing the car down. What seems to be far more important is the wing position. If you've ever watched like full length like feature races of an in-car camera, Rico Abreu, Sheldon Haudenschild, David Gravel, right? Pick your famous sprint car driver. You will see them working that wing slider a ton. You don't need to do that as much in the sim, but I have found that wing position seems to be far more important than the wing angle. That doesn't mean you don't want to increase it, but what we would do in terms of, hey, it's slick, let's go from 24 to 27, right, and leave it at 0. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. What seems to be the case now is, hey, you got it at 24 and the track's super slicked off, maybe go to 25 and move it back a couple clicks. Do you remember when we would move it back? You could move it back one click and all of a sudden your car went from loose to great. You did 2 clicks and all of a sudden it might not turn. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Now you move it back a couple clicks and you can feel the car grip up. The rear end's got more grip, but it's not to where it's sacrificing all the aero on the front. There would be times you'd move that wing back and now it's like, dude, my front wheels, I can't turn the damn car. Now it's too tight. So the position seems to be much more accurate than what we had before, which I think is a good thing. Also, the nice thing about the wing angle with what we have now with this current build is it seems that you could miss the setup on your wing angle, right? You might not have the angle correct, but you can find a position where, hey, man, my car feels pretty good. You might not have the best handling car, but you can make up for an ill handling car with your wing position. So that is something that I've noticed. Another thing that the Aero stuff has seemed to do along with the grip levels of the track is it has seemed to affect the setup of the car. So now you've got adjustments on the car that you can make, and you're not going to feel them as much because the downforce of that wing covers up a lot of it. This is another thing that I've heard and talked to people about, and they've said, yeah, that's, kind of the case. The car the cars in real life, the aero is so important with the wings now. You could make a shock adjustment and you might feel it a little bit, but more or less it's gonna be based on how much downforce you're getting on that wing, how much air you're getting on that wing. I remember years ago, and this is more than 20 years ago, at Calistoga, I saw Sammy Swindell running. I don't know. It looked like an easy up shock you would put on a midget, right? I mean, the car rolled over on the right side so hard it looked like a non-wing sprint car, and it's because the track was as black as the parking lot. They don't do that in real life anymore because of the aero aspect. They've discovered years ago that, hey, we need to maintain that same aero profile through the corner to help with the aerodynamics of the car. That seems to be more along the lines of what we're seeing with the setups now in iRacing. And I talked about this in a previous video when I did the setup stuff, and it seems even more important now. The aero profile of the car has a big effect on how it's going to handle, how it's going to feel. I noticed more changes with my car by playing with the rake of the car, like actually, lowering the front end, raising the rear end, as opposed to raising the front and lowering the rear. When I would raise the front up and lower the rear like we used to do on slick tracks, and we used to do it all the time back in the day, the the car would not handle as well, and I'm guessing, my theory is that's because of the aero. We're actually messing with the aero. I think that actually has an effect on the aero. When I would drop the nose down some, and I wouldn't touch the wings, I would leave the wings the same, but I would drop the nose down and I would raise the rear end up, so now the rear end has more travel, which gives you more forward drive. The car turned better and still had better drive off, and I was faster and the car was more comfortable. So the aero aspect is really big, and it's going to be something that I think people might need to get used to, because you might make an adjustment and might not feel it nearly as much as you used to. If we went from a 500 bump rubber to a 1500 bump rubber, if you remember previous build, I mean, the car would pogo stick, right? I mean, you couldn't drive it. Now, because the aero is so much more prominent, you can go from a 500 to a 1500, and yeah, the car might not be perfect, but you can still drive it. It doesn't make it undrivable, and that's because of the aero. Keep in mind, I've only tested this on a few tracks. I have not tested every track yet, right? So doing that at like Fairbury, for example, it might be undrivable. But at Volusia, Eldora, I-55, where else was I? Knoxville, Lucas Oil, those types of tracks that I've tested, you could still drive it. It might not, like I said, might not be perfect, but you could still drive it. So those are all things to think about. With your setups that you have from previous seasons, you can still use them. You might need to make some tweaks to them, but you can still use them. It's not like they're junk, okay? It's not like they're worthless and you got to throw them out. You can still use them, and you can still be really good with them. You just might want to make adjustments a little bit different than what you used to. The wheel spacing, you can get a lot done with wheel spacing. You can get a lot done with just wing position. Going from a like what iRacing has here, if I want to get a little bit more weight onto the right rear, if I go, to a 4-4 and add a half a turn, like you might not feel that a ton. Like you might not feel a huge difference when you're driving, but wheel spin wise, control of the car wise, speed wise, you'll see an improvement. Okay, so it's something you're going to have to really test and play around with. It is going to feel different, but in my opinion, and from what I've talked to, like I said, from people that I know, real life drivers, things like that, they say it's a step in the right direction as well. So, aero stuff, big change. The notes made it sound like it wasn't that big a deal. I mean, they just said aero was redone, and that could have been small, but it seems to be a bigger change than what most of us initially thought. All right. All right. Another thing is the speeds of the cars. Okay. And this is something that we've seen a fairly significant change, especially in the 360. So on the tacky tracks, right, we would see, like if you look at the real life world record at a track like, let me see, I got my notes here, at a track like Volusia in a 360, real life world record, which was set by Brenham Crouch last year in 2023, his lap time world record in a 360, 14.16. On the sim last season in the 360s, we were doing 12.5s. Okay? Keep in mind that speed in the 360 that we were doing on the sim is what the real life world record is at Volusia in a 410, a 12.5. So the 360s were way faster on the sim than they should be, than they are in real life. Way faster, not even close. Now the 410s, there were times it was fairly close, but usually we were 3 to 5 tenths faster when you start looking at world record stuff. Another one, if you look at, the sim Volusia 410 world record is 12.56. In the sim, we were doing 12.1s. Knoxville 360s were a full second faster than the world record. The 410s, a half a second faster. So with them slowing the cars down in terms of the speeds, which I do think the Aero has something to do with that. I do think that that is part of it. I don't think it's one thing. Like, I don't think it's just the tracks. I think the Aero in combination with the track, the tacky and the slick, I think that is playing a role. I think it's kind of together. All right. So, yeah, they've slowed them down, but it should be much closer to real life speeds that, we would see. Now, another thing is the actual driving of the car. And this is something that a lot of people have very mixed opinions about, mixed emotions about, thoughts about, because even as someone like myself, like I said, who's never driven a sprint car, I can look at video and I can be like, well, dude, we don't drive the sprint cars in the sim like that. And once again, like I said, we're never going to be one-to-one equal with it. But now it seems like we are at least having to work the car much more than we did in the past. And that seems to be more on par with what we see in real life. If you look at this video clip right here of, David Gravel, I think it's at Lincoln, you can see how much more he's working the wheel, and you can see the wheels, how much more they're moving. Where we would just do what we would call, stab and steer, where you're basically just on throttle, kind of turning left. All right, so having to actually lock to the right, that happens quite a bit in the sprint cars. I talk about it all the time. Keeping the car straight doesn't mean you're not moving the wheel. It means that the car is maintaining that angle through the corner. And a lot of times you'll see that in real life where these guys are working the wheel like crazy. I talk about the brakes too. That's another thing that I tested out immediately. You are not penalized for using the brakes if you're keeping the car straight and maintaining grip. Yes, if you can do it wide open without brake, you're going to be faster because obviously the brake, even though it wings the car over and helps it, stay hooked up and all that stuff like that, it's still got to slow the car down because it's the brake. It's going to slow it down. But once the track is not tacky, using just a little bit of brake, and you can see these guys, tacky tracks, real life, using the brake to drive the car, turn the car. That's what they do. So that to me makes it more realistic. And talking to my friends, once again, they even say, they're like, yeah, dude, that's what we do. We're using the brakes to turn the cars. That's how we wing them over. You want the car to wing over, it should be doing that. The car should not be flat. You're never going to just hold it wide open and just stuff it onto the wall like that, like we used to. So, again, for me, that seems to be another step in the right direction. Another thing that I noticed is the car definitely feels more stuck to the track, particularly the left rear. And on a wing sprint car, that's critical. Sticking the left rear, I mean, basically the setup is, everything that you do on the setup is built around sticking the left rear. The easiest way to think about pretty much all dirt cars, Late models are like this. Big blocks are like, you think about the left rear drives you, the right rear turns you. Okay, that's why we run so much stagger in sprint cars. And this feels like that more than it did before, in my opinion. And once again, talking to my buddy who does both, he even said it. He was like, yeah, I think this feels much better. He went so far to say, which I was shocked. He said that he thinks a a good sim racer on in the 410 sprint cars right now on the sim, he thinks that they could actually get into a real life car and do it if they're driving, realistically using throttle, brake, that type of thing. He said the only discerning factor would be, do they have the stones, do they have the guts to actually really be on throttle because you're actually going that fast. So I was pretty shocked when he told me that, but he was being very, very serious. He was like, the reactions, the way that you do it. He said, obviously you don't have the seat of the pants feel. He goes, but using 2 feet, the way the car wings over, your hand movements. He says there's a lot of stuff that's similar. He says, and like I say too, it's not 1-to-1. He goes, but it is similar. It does give you at least the feel of it, which is really all we can ask for at the end of the day. So those things are all really, really good in my opinion. Now, one thing that has come out, I've seen a lot of, I only had it happen to me once, and that is the track surface in terms of bumpy. I had a test session that I did, and it was using the generated, like, forecasted weather, where the track seemed comparable to when I took my son to the Monster Energy motocross race at Oracle Park a month ago. Like there was like jumps on the track. It was by far the bumpiest track I'd been on. I don't know what that's from. I don't know if that's a track thing, a weather thing, a sprint car thing, a combination of the three. I've heard other people talk about this in the forums where they're like, dude, the track is so rough, you can't get around it. It's way worse than it was before. I don't know about that. We see rough tracks in real life. Obviously, we don't see tracks so rough the cars can't get around it. You can always find a line, but the one that I did, it was bad. I'm not opposed to rough tracks because we do get them. Now, if every track is like that, that's gonna suck. Nobody wants that. But if it's something that you have to account for every now and then, I mean, it's like rain, right? It's something you have to account for. So, once again, I haven't dealt with it a ton one time, but I've heard others talk about it. So that is something to think about. I don't know what the worst case scenario of that is. I don't know if it lasts. If you remember before, we would have rough tracks, and by heat race 2, some of the bumps would be smoother because people had been hitting them or the track worn. So I do think that adds character, and it does add realism. Tracks do rut up, but once again, that seems to be something that's more along the lines, in the eyes of the beholder, I guess you would say, because some people are going to like it, some people are going to hate it, some people are going to just not care. All right, you guys. So that's going to do it. I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on it, tell you guys what I think and what I was hearing from, like I said, real world drivers, people who have experience with this stuff. Like I said a few minutes ago, I mentioned it a bunch of times. We're never going to have it 1-to-1. Right? We can hope that it's, gives us a sense of it, gives us, an idea of what it would be like. And that's all we want. That's all we can really hope for. And to me, right now, I think this is a step in the right direction. Now, ultimately, we're not going to know for sure until we get out and we start racing with people, until we get a few weeks into the season and we've had a chance to run, official races, league races, because we know how big of a deal track state makes. If the track is just tacky and it's just one lane and everybody's doing the same thing, then yeah, it's not going to be very much fun. But if the track does slick off or have some character and you can actually develop those runs and make passes and throw sliders or do cut downs or whatever, and we can actually get out there and race, then, hey, this was good. This was a step in the right direction. Because in terms of the way that it feels when we got going, I do think that is a step in the right direction. Like I said, so do the people that I know who have real world experience. Now, I will say this. Previously, I had talked to people who had real world experience. They said that they thought it was a step in the right direction with what we had previously, the last build. And there was also people who were real world drivers who were like, this sucks, it's not a step in the right direction. So even that seems to be kind of up in the air, right? But like I said, these are the people that I know. It's what I know. So hopefully you guys like it as much as I do, because I think we've seen, you know, a drop off on the dirt side. You know, it got really bad after the wonky stuff. We've seen it pick up. You know, this last season, I definitely noticed that we were getting more cars in the servers, which is awesome, and hopefully it continues to go that direction. Because ultimately, you know, we all join the sim for some form of racing, right? Whether you do like me and race a bunch of different things, or you just have one that you love to do, or whatever it is, we all did it because we want to race, right? Most of us, we can't afford the real thing. This is how we get our racing fix, and we want it to be the best possible product that we can get. And hopefully this will continue to just get better and better and better. And like I said, I think we're on the right path. Hopefully we are. We'll find out after we get a few weeks into the season. So you guys, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit the like button. You already know that. Hit the subscribe button. Everything else. I do have another video coming. Like I said, we're going to talk about the dirt with the other cars, because I do think there's some stuff we can cover there, and I do think we've definitely seen an improvement with that as well. It's nice to get to full throttle consistently in some of the cars, so that's pretty cool. Now, full throttle does not mean holding it wide open all the time. I'll talk about that in the video, but it is nice to be able to do that. So I think we've seen an improvement across the board on dirt, and that, in my opinion, is a very good thing. So thank you very much as always. If you want to check out any of the stuff that SSR has to offer, free setups, free paint, we got a bunch of free stuff. You want to check out our leagues, or just join our Discord group and hang out with other sim racers, whatever, get some help. Links for all that down in the description below. But that'll do it. Thank you very much once again for joining me. And until next time, I want to wish you good luck, good racing.